15-year-old Selena Hung adored nighttime rides, the hush of empty streets, the thrill of breaking curfew. That particular December, with the winter break looming and the year nearing its end, she grew bolder than ever. It started innocently. After evening study sessions, she and her friend Henry would hop on his old motorbike and zip around the outskirts of Rosevale town. Sometimes they parted at a well-lit crossroad. But one night, Selena insisted on using the most remote route home, a pitch-black road where no street lamps stood, flanked by farmland and silent fields. Henry's eyes bulged at her suggestion. "No way, Selena. That route's rumored to be haunted. Plus, it's so dark I can't see a thing." But Selena scoffed, crossing her arms over her school bag. "Haunted? You big chicken. Ghosts can't do anything to us." A defiant grin spread across her lips. "Come on, I want to see if it's really as creepy as people say." "Ugh," Henry groaned. "Fine, but if I scream, blame yourself." They rolled onto the narrow path under the moonless sky. The farmland stretched into the darkness. At one point, Selena noticed a dimly lit shack, a coffee stand, ironically open late. Next to it, half bathed in the shack's glow, sat a modest headstone, an old grave with a simple marker. The flicker of that single bulb revealed the name on the stone, but Selena didn't bother reading it. She was more amused that a cafe existed in such a lonely spot. Soon, the farmland gave way to a deserted strip with only tall grass and ditches on either side. By the time they reached the main road and parted ways for the night, Selena wore a playful smirk. "Told you, no ghosts jumped out." Henry just shook his head, dropping her off at her gate. She slipped inside, throwing a sassy wave over her shoulder. In her adrenaline-fueled mind, that was the end of that. Little did she know that single late-night venture had changed everything. Almost immediately after that fateful ride, Selena began to change. First, she found herself snapping at her father and mother over trivial matters, something unthinkable in the Hung household, where respect was paramount. Then she started skipping meals or eating incessantly in random bursts. Her best friend at school, Trisha, teased her for appearing fatigued and disinterested in boys. Yet ironically, Selena soon got close to a senior from the soccer club. They dated 2 short weeks before she abruptly broke it off, searching for an excuse to pick a fight. "What's with you?" Trisha demanded one afternoon by their lockers. "You used to be such a sweetheart. Now you're moody, blowing up at everyone." Selena shrugged, rubbing her temples. She was so sleepy all the time, as if her energy were drained. "I'm just stressed, maybe," she mumbled. "Midterm pressure, I guess." But even she didn't fully believe that explanation. At home, her parents, busy preparing for overseas work, merely assumed teenage rebellion. They left soon after, trusting a distant aunt to check on Selena. Freed from much oversight, the girl's odd behaviors escalated. Then the dreams came. At first, Selena would see herself walking alone at night, retracing that pitch-black road. The sky was starless, and far in the distance, that lonely coffee shack glowed. She would approach, footsteps echoing, but the dream always ended before she reached the grave. Night after night, the dream repeated, each time edging closer to the tombstone. Finally, about a week into these dreams, she reached the grave. In that dreamlike haze, she peered at the name chiseled on the stone, Kine Gwyn M.D., followed by a birth and death date. Through the half-lucid lens of slumber, Selena jolted, as if thinking, a doctor's grave out here? Then she'd wake, heart pounding. During the day, she told herself it was just her subconscious playing tricks. But each subsequent dream revealed slightly more. She'd notice a figure, a man, standing some yards ahead, wearing slacks and a collared shirt. She couldn't see his face, only that he was tall and possessed a quiet aura. Eventually, the man in her dream turned, beckoning her. The first few nights, she only trailed behind, never closing the distance. Then he started to hold her hand, guiding her away from the grave, deeper into a surreal midnight landscape. Strangely, Selena felt no fear. Instead, she felt comforted, as if treading a softly lit path with a calm, protective presence. She'd awaken the next morning feeling less fatigued but oddly enthralled. "Trisha," she confided at lunch, "I keep dreaming about some guy. I don't see his face, but I know he's nice. He takes me around, like we're exploring. It's weird, I'm not scared at all." Trisha just gave her a playful elbow. "Ooh, a secret dream boyfriend? Has high school turned you hopelessly romantic?" But Selina knew it wasn't a mere schoolgirl fantasy. Something deeper stirred each time. The day she finally glimpsed his face, a fleeting glance, she woke with tears of longing on her cheeks. In the dream, he was breathtakingly handsome, exuding a gentle grace. He said nothing of who he was, except to smile and lead her to eat street food, drink iced tea, do silly, carefree things. This closeness felt heartbreakingly real. Shortly after, Selina was invited to a friend's birthday party. Henry was also going, so they decided to ride together once more, just as they had on the infamous night. At the party, Henry got hammered, ignoring Selina's scolding. When it ended near midnight, Selina insisted, "I came with you, I'll go back with you." But Henry, swaying from too many beers, insisted otherwise. "You should catch a ride with someone else. I'm not safe to drive." They argued. Selina, stubborn as usual, wanted to ensure Henry got home, but he refused. Their spat ended with him storming off to crash on a sofa. Furious, she hailed a taxi alone. The next morning, news struck like lightning. Henry had left the party later with a different friend, got into a motorbike accident, and nearly died. Fortunately, he survived with just a torn ligament. Shocked, Selina dashed to the hospital to see him. There, a shaken Henry recounted, "I only half remember. I told you to go with someone else. Then I hopped on the bike with T, but we crashed into a metal barrier. It happened so fast, it was insane. If you had been on that bike, you might have been done for." Selina's mind swirled. That evening, she had a dream, but it wasn't playful. Instead, the gentleman's voice whispered, "See? That's why I had you go alone. Had you been stubborn, you'd have died in Henry's place." She woke drenched in sweat, a chill dancing down her spine. His voice sounded so real, like a quiet echo in her ear. She sat up, shivering. Who is he? Why does he protect me? Selina quickly realized this intangible guardian wasn't just limiting his interventions to the dream world. A week later, she got an offer to pose for a photo shoot from a local photography studio that discovered her social media pictures. The photographer suggested meeting in a hotel suite for fashion shots. It seemed legitimate. Other local influencers had done the same. But that night, the mysterious dream man reappeared, looking unusually stern. In a dream, he told her plainly, "Don't go tomorrow. Stay home. Please trust me." Startled, Selina woke to midday light flooding her room. She pressed her palm against her racing heart. She had already promised to show up at 2 p.m. for that shoot. She debated. Anxiety gnawed at her. Ultimately, recalling how he'd saved her from Henry's accident, she decided to trust that warning. "I'm sorry," she texted the photographer at 1 p.m. "Family emergency came up. I can't make it." Her last-minute cancellation enraged the studio. They accused her of unprofessionalism. She apologized profusely, but they demanded she never contact them again. Feeling guilty, she sank onto her bed, half wondering if she'd ruined a chance for modeling. Maybe the dream was just illusions. Then, late that afternoon, horrifying news arrived. The studio's team traveling by van to the hotel suite had crashed. 3 people died on impact, including the driver, the main photographer who had texted Selina, and 1 assistant. 4 others survived, battered. When Selina heard this, her phone nearly slipped from her shaking hands. She sank to her knees, tears flowing. Had I gone, I'd have been in that van. She realized once more the dream man had intervened, saving her life. At the victim's funeral, she forced herself to pay respects. Approaching the casket of the photographer who had personally invited her, she sensed a dread chill. For a split second, she believed she saw his face dripping blood, as if he momentarily manifested to scowl at her. Only she seemed to notice. She trembled, leaving swiftly after lighting incense. That night, the dream man consoled her softly, "Now you see. Had you insisted on going, you wouldn't return." The more the dream man looked out for her, the more Selina felt enthralled by him. Each slumber escorted her into a vivid realm where he guided her to markets, cafes, or scenic meadows, all while wearing an easy smile. She learned, through half-spoken phrases, that his name was Kai, a gentle soul who had once been a doctor, presumably killed in an accident. He never described the details of his death, but she guessed it might have something to do with the grave near that pitch-black road. Night after night, her initial fear melted into longing. She found herself giggling in dreams, holding his hand or riding on a ghostly motorbike behind him. In waking hours, she daydreamed, missing him. This was no ordinary crush. Somehow, she felt an unexplainable bond that transcended the living world. She also noticed that she no longer snapped at people as viciously. It was as if her restlessness was replaced by the calm presence of Kai's spirit. Life continued. Selena studied, socialized, tried ignoring the odd stares from peers who noticed her zoned-out moments. Then came a midterm exam, for which she barely prepared. The night prior, Kai reappeared in her dream, gently reminding her about a certain chapter that was rumored to appear on the exam. She woke at dawn, grabbed her notes, and crammed that specific content. In class, she found it was exactly the main question. She breezed through the test with an incredulous grin. He helped me. He's literally reading my future. Thus, their relationship progressed, crossing boundaries of life and death. Yet Selena wondered, should I fear a Duyanam? She'd heard older women warn that if you keep seeing a ghostly lover, you might be taken to the afterlife eventually. But Kai never threatened or showed jealousy. He was gentle. So, she let her heart remain open to his nightly visits. Tragedy circled once more. Her friend Henry, though recovering from his ligament injury, mentioned how he experienced nightmares of a car accident again. Selena worried he might be cursed. That very evening, Kai's voice in a dream assured her Henry would be fine. He has his own fate, he whispered. She woke somewhat relieved. But the bigger shock arrived a few nights later, when Kai told her in a dream, I want to show you something. He led her along that dark road from their first meeting, stopping by the coffee shack. That's my grave, he said softly, pointing to the stone you saw. I was a doctor. I died in a crash coming home from a hospital late one night, on this exact stretch of road. Selena's throat constricted. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Her voice trembled with empathy. He offered a wistful smile. I've wandered for years, but never found peace, until I saw you traveling here that night. Something about you drew me in. I wanted to protect you. She blinked tears. He's a wandering spirit. But the dream ended abruptly. Upon waking, she felt heartbreak for him. Her affection soared. She almost wanted to talk to him even while awake. Days later, two strangers, an older couple, maybe in their 50s, knocked at Selena's door. The man's face was weathered but kind, the woman's eyes rimmed with sorrow. Selena's heart pounded, for they looked eerily similar to how Kai described his mother and father in passing. The mother stepped forward. You must be Selena. Our son Kai asked us to come see you, she murmured. He visited us in a dream, said your name, said he, her voice cracked. Selena, stunned, ushered them inside, offering tea. They explained that in their dream, Kai said he found the girl he loved, that he wanted them to ask for her hand in a spiritual sense. But our son has been dead for 3 years. He was a doctor who died in a roadside accident, the father added, voice trembling. We can't quite fathom it. Tears welled in Selena's eyes. So it's all real. She admitted she'd been dreaming of Kai for months. The parents sobbed quietly, struggling to process the notion that their deceased son might be forging a connection with a living teenage girl. We want you to be safe, the mother whispered. We love our son, but we can't let him trap you in the afterlife. So we have asked a spiritual master to do a Duyan severance ceremony. We hope you'll consent. Selena's chest ached. She actually felt love for Kai now, but the idea of being drawn to death also terrified her. She nodded, speechless, tears streaming. They planned for a ceremony in Kai's old home a few days later, enlisting a revered monk from Tainan. Before the ceremony, Kai reappeared in Selena's dream, sorrow etched on his face. My parents want to sever our bond. If they do, I may have to leave for reincarnation, he said gently. I don't want to lose you, but I also can't force you to stay in this half-life. If I go, we might never meet again in any lifetime. Do you want me to remain? Selena's breath caught. She was torn, wrestling with compassion for him versus survival instincts. I care about you, she whispered in the dream, but living in the dead, we can't truly be together, can we? He cradled her face, tears glistening in his eyes. We can't. Unless you joined me in death. I'd never ask that. So this might be goodbye. She woke sobbing, her chest tight with heartbreak. Yet she knew the ceremony was necessary to ensure her life. The next days felt like a hazy sorrow. Meanwhile, Kai did not appear in her dreams. as if giving her space to decide. Finally, the day arrived. Selena traveled with her aunt to Kai's family home, a modest multi-story house with an air of mourning. Kai's parents guided her in, eyes glistening with regret. The spiritual master from Tay Nin, an older man robed in brown, greeted them in a respectful hush. Within the living room, a small altar was set, incense, candles, offerings, and a framed photograph of Kai wearing a white coat, stethoscope draped around his neck. Selena stared at it, tears threatening to overflow. He was so young. She recognized the gentle smile from her dreams. The master rang a small bell, chanting incantations. Selena sensed the air thicken. Suddenly, she felt her body quake, a numbness overtaking her limbs. Gasping, she realized a presence forcibly pulled at her consciousness. She collapsed, hearing faint echoes of Kai's voice. "Don't do this to me. I love her. I can't let her go." Those witnessing said Selena lay prone on the floor, speaking in a male voice that sobbed, "I don't want to reincarnate. Let me stay with her." Kai's parents wept openly, torn between their longing for their son's spirit and the knowledge that he must not cling to the living girl. The master commanded calmly, "Kai, release her, or I will invoke a harsher banishment. A spirit who refuses may face permanent unrest, never to reincarnate." The sobbing voice quieted. Then Selena's body trembled. Slowly, the presence retreated. When Selena came to, she found Kai's mother kneeling beside her, tears soaking her cheeks. "He's gone," she whispered brokenly. He promised to step away." Exhausted, Selena barely mustered the strength to nod. Inside, her heart felt ripped in half. She loved him, but it was doomed from the start. After that intense rite, Selena stayed in the house for an extra night, with the parents' permission. Oddly, she longed to see Kai one more time, to say goodbye properly. She asked if she could sleep in his old room. The parents, sniffling, agreed. The father said, "We never changed much in there. Go if it comforts you." That evening, she climbed the stairs to a small, neat bedroom. A desk cluttered with medical textbooks and notes. A bed with rumpled sheets. Photos pinned to the corkboard. Kai grinning at a hospital charity event, hugging colleagues. Tears gathered in Selena's eyes as she gently touched them. He was a real doctor, gone too soon. The weight of it pressed on her chest. In bed, she cried silently, hugging one of his old t-shirts. She half expected him to appear in a dream. Instead, she drifted off into a silent void. Hours later, she startled awake, sensing a faint presence. She glimpsed a silhouette at the foot of the bed, Kai. He looked pained, tears rolling down his cheeks. No words were spoken, but he leaned forward, brushing her hair from her face. "I'll be leaving," his expression seemed to say. Selena reached out a trembling hand. "Don't go," she pleaded. He mouthed a single phrase without sound, "I love you, but we can't remain." A faint shimmer of tears welled in his eyes. Then he turned away, crossing the threshold of the door, and vanished. She bolted upright, flicking on the desk lamp. No one stood in the hallway. On the floor near the foot of the bed, glistened a few droplets of water, as if tears had fallen. Stunned, she sank to her knees, weeping until dawn. Time rolled forward like a relentless tide. Selena finished high school, carrying the ache of that lost, impossible love. She rarely told anyone the full story. Her parents, still overseas, remained clueless about the spiritual ordeal. Henry recovered from his accident, forging a new path in business. The memory of Kai lingered in Selena's thoughts as she moved on to college. In the years since, she never again felt his presence in her dreams. She concluded that day in his family's home was truly the final farewell, that he had chosen to reincarnate or wander somewhere far from her plane. She cherished the memory of his protective care, his silent guidance, and the heartbreak of letting him go. At age 20, she crossed paths with a kindly intern at a local clinic, Dr. Egan, who bore traces of that gentle sincerity reminiscent of Kai. She felt an inexplicable sense of comfort around him. As they started dating, a wave of déjà vu overcame her. Was it pure coincidence that the new man in her life was also a doctor? She suspected the universe's invisible threads might weave her story to reflect echoes of that lost soul. Though she seldom voiced it, Selena sometimes prayed in quiet nights. "Kai, if you can see me now, thank you. I'm okay. I hope you're at peace too." Despite the tears and sorrow, Selena found a gentle solace in the knowledge that once, in the hush of night, She had encountered a spirit who loved her enough to protect her from mortal danger. Someone who, even in death, sought to keep her safe from ill-fated accidents. If their fleeting bond carried over into the next life, she believed, perhaps they would meet again in a kinder realm. Kai's parents remained fond of Selena, treating her as part of their extended family. Periodically, they invited her for tea, exchanging small updates about their daily lives. Each time, they'd look at her with misty eyes, thankful that she had shown their deceased son a measure of love in his final posthumous days. Selena would smile wistfully, remembering the tears on that bedroom floor. Even now, 5 years after the initial events, Selena can recall Kai's face with startling clarity, the confident yet gentle slope of his brow, the soft compassion in his eyes whenever he gazed at her in those midnight dreams. Sometimes, in half-awake states, she envisions him standing by a window, offering that signature reassuring nod. Then he dissolves like mist at sunrise, leaving only the faint ache of memory. Though sorrow tinges the chapter of her life, she's grateful for the intangible gift, the knowledge that love can cross boundaries of life and death, if only briefly. And she's mindful that fate rarely grants second chances to the living who entangle with spirits, hence the necessity of letting him go. In her new relationship with Dr. Egan, she sees glimpses of the same warmth she once found in those spectral arms. Every so often, she wonders, is it truly random? Or is there a cosmic sense of closure, that Kai's departure paved the way for a living reflection of that beloved presence? Selena may never know the full answer, but she's at peace with that uncertainty, carrying the ghostly love story deep in her heart, the ephemeral romance with a young doctor who gave her more than protection. He gave her the courage to face life's dangers and love again in the realm of the living.